Welcome 8th graders. This video is to introduce you to your first unit, which is two-point perspective. Here you have two images that demonstrate two-point perspective where the angled lines are converging to two different vanishing points instead of the one vanishing point that you did last year. So let's move forward. So your EQ this year is how does one and two-point perspective help a person to better understand the dynamics of places and spaces. This is very similar to your EQ from last year for the one-point perspective project, but now we're asking you to compare the two in this EQ. So as you move forward in this PowerPoint and through your production of the unit, keep this question in mind as to how this technique of having two vanishing points compares to only having one vanishing point, and how both of them help a person understand the dynamics of places and spaces. All right, so moving on, let's go to the first vocab word. Move my video here. So the first word, one-point perspective, we're basically formally comparing last year's project and this point project. I am realizing now that the one on the right should say two-point perspective. I'm going to have to change that. But one-point perspective is a drawing method that shows how things appear to get smaller as they get further away, converging towards a single vanishing point in the horizon line. So down this hallway, you can see all the angles from the lockers and the ceiling. Everything is going to that one point down in the center. So this should help you remember what you did last year on this project. Whereas this year, this should say two-point perspective. The definition is basically the same, except this time the lines converge towards two vanishing points. I guess that's some editing to do. I need to take away the A, but it goes towards two vanishing points on the horizon line. So in this picture of the city, you can see the vanishing point on the left and the right. And you notice that the lines to the left of the building all go left to this vanishing point. Even the top of the buildings all go that way. The lines for the windows. Remember, the lines for the windows, the angles change as you go higher and lower. And all the lines going to the right go to the right vanishing point. So it's not just a random guessing game as to which line is at which point. All the lines to the right go right, and all the lines to the left go left. So this allows you to see basically multiple perspectives instead of just the one viewpoint. All right, moving on. Horizon line is the same as last year. It's a horizontal line that represents the viewer's eye level or to show where the sky meets the ground. So here you have the horizon line in this photo. The top of the sky, the bottom is the ground. This is the water, the ocean of this island. So the question is, how does changing the placement of the horizon line affect a viewer's understanding of space? So when you have the horizon line flat in the middle, it's the ground level perspective. When it's low to the ground, it's a bird's eye perspective, and having it up, it's called a worm's eye perspective, where it looks like you're looking up a hill at the artwork instead of down upon it. All right, so next is depth. Depth is the distance from near to far. This picture and graphics do a good job demonstrating the area of the picture that's near right here and where it is far. So it seems everything is getting smaller and smaller according to not just this font, but the images as well, as it goes back into space. So why is depth important to a viewer's understanding of space? The reason for this is that in space, as things get smaller, as things go further into the background, they get smaller, and as they get closer up to you, they're larger, they're in your face, they're up close. So in order to understand space and to show accurate space in your artwork, you must have depth, and that is why it is so important. Vanishing points, I say points this time because now we have two. It's the place where all lines converge towards their respective sides. So notice how I changed that part of the definition. It's their respective sides. As I mentioned earlier, to put it simply, the lines that go left converge at the left vanishing point, and the lines that go right converge at the right vanishing point. That's demonstrated in this video here, as the lines that go right go to the right dot, and the lines that go to the left red dot, the left vanishing point. All right, how does the vanishing point help create a sense of depth to the viewer? Here you have, I added these two vanishing points in the picture. Vanishing points help create a sense of depth because it basically creates the depth itself. The vanishing points forces everything to squeeze tighter and tighter and get smaller and smaller as it goes back into space. So that gives the viewer the impression of depth that things are actually getting smaller, and that's all because of the vanishing point. All right, moving on to types of two-point perspective art. You can actually choose for this lesson to either do an interior space. So here you have two examples. The horizon line is in red, the vanishing points are in blue, and you can see the green lines represent some of the angles here and how they were created. There is a video to show you how to do this in today's file, but these are just pictures to kind of demonstrate, give a rough tutorial as to how they were done. So these are interior spaces. You have a closet, you have a bedroom. We talk about having a level of creativity that's above and beyond. Both of these artworks would exemplify that, adding a level of detail and creativity beyond just having a bed and a window. The more you add, the better. So you could choose to do an interior space. You could choose to do a two-point exterior space. And notice the notes that the vanishing point can come off the paper. You can either use a piece of tape or a sticker to mark your vanishing point. Just make sure they're on the same horizon line. So you could take a ruler and extend your horizon line off the paper, take a little piece of tape and mark the table. You could even put a larger piece of paper underneath and just mark it with a pencil if you wanted to. But both these artworks have a vanishing point. This is two vanishing points coming off the paper, and the bottom lighthouse has one on the far left that comes off the paper. So you can create these same effects. You don't have to be limited to having the point on the paper, but the technique still stays the same. All right, here you have a little smiley face stickers. If you have stickers, you can use them. Lastly is the cityscape. That's the most common, but I don't want to narrow your options. So you can either do the interior, exterior, or cityscape. And the cityscape here, you see the horizon line and the vanishing points. They're hidden by the buildings. It's fine if the buildings overlap the vanishing points as long as you know where they are. And here you can see the enhanced level of detail in the windows. I mean, this is a really high level of detail in these buildings here, but it shows you how far you can take it. This one seems to be a little bit more reasonable, although this is still a lot of detail. And notice also that the building that's down in the front in the foreground, it's below the horizon line, so you can see the roof of the building or the buildings, whereas the buildings in the middle ground are much higher than the horizon line, so you cannot see the rooftops. I mean, you can see the pieces on top of the roof, but you can't see the flat surface of the roof. So depending on how high or low your buildings are, you'll either be able to see the rooftops or not. All right, so those are your three options. So hopefully you at least have some idea as to what you want to choose. At the end of this PowerPoint, just make sure you watch the video of the one you want to do so you know step by step how to complete it. Or you can watch a video of all of them, it's up to you. But you only need to watch the one that you actually want to create. So the next vocab word, jumping back to the vocab, is space. It's a distance or area between things. And the whole purpose of this assignment is to create depth through space. So that's why this is one of your words. And how does two-point perspective alter the spaces between objects? Essentially what I'm asking is the objects as they're side to side, how does that, how do things getting smaller into space affect the spacing? And basically that things get closer together as they go further back into space. So the gaps that you might see between these two buildings here, as you follow back, the spaces get tighter and tighter. They get shorter and shorter, just like things get smaller and smaller. Foreground is the front space of an artwork. This is the same image as last year. The middle ground, of course, is a space between the front or the foreground and the background. Background is self-explanatory. It's in the back. The question is, why does the foreground need to include the highest level of detail? The reason for that is because the objects that are closest to us are seen the most easily, so they'll have the most detail. That's why you have heavy detail in these buildings, and even Frankenstein, who's cleverly or creatively leaning over these buildings towards the foreground, and as everything gets further back, it gets less and less detailed. So you can show that in the actual detail itself, or even the impression of the line, meaning that some of your pencil marks in the buildings going back into space can be much lighter, and the pressing of your pencil, the pencil marks can be much darker in value as they get further up, so that the details are seen more easily. Background, the backspace of an artwork. Background here would be all this in the back. That's pretty self-explanatory, and the question is basically the last question, just in reverse, why do objects become less detailed as they get closer to the background? And as I've said multiple times already, the things that are further away are hardest for us to see, and that's why they become less detailed as they go back, because you can't see things that clearly when they're that far away unless you have the vision of a hawk. Lastly is middle ground. That's the space between the background and the foreground. And the question, this one's a little tougher from all the other questions. It asks, how can the space in the middle ground create a focal point for the viewer? The foreground demands your attention up front, and the background kind of fills that space behind everything in the foreground. But what's left in the middle ground, you can have basically fill that space to create more of the environment, more of the scene. Here you have a little cat. This one's more in the foreground than the middle ground, but it still shows an example of creating a focal point, and then all the other buildings branch off from that focal point. I had a better example. I don't know why I didn't use it, but that's the answer to the question, is that you have the background and the foreground kind of framing the middle ground, and you fill in the middle ground with things that kind of tie everything together to create that focal, that center point. So that answers that question. Lesson guidelines to make sure that you're very successful in this unit. I added these notes from last year from some things that I took notice of. Please make sure you don't copy the examples line from line, whether it be from this video or the other videos that you're going to watch that show you step by step how to make it. Make your art original. That's one of your grading criteria, so please make sure it's original and make it something you enjoy. Don't just do something random and tedious and boring. Make your design, brainstorm your design and the overall image to be something fun. You can use the images as examples and references, but just to help guide your progress, just don't copy them line for line. Choose your layout, whether it's interior, exterior, cityscape. Always use a ruler for every line. You should not be eyeballing and freehanding these lines. Use a ruler. Draw your horizon line lightly. You'll be erasing this as you build upon your artwork. Also, use 2 vanishing points, not 1. The space you create must be realistic, but what is happening in your city does not. What that means is the linear perspective creates a realistic space, but you can make it completely abstract and odd. I've had students have robots destroying the city. You saw the one of Frankenstein in the city. I've had Cookie Monster eating the moon, which is pretty funny, and Elmo kicking a trash can down the street for whatever reason. But you can have a lot of fun with it. Fill the entire space of the paper and add color with color pencils when you're finished your drawing. So last year, it did not have to be in color. This year, it does. And this quote up top repeats what I just said about making sure you have fun, be creative. These are some excellent examples. I love this one of Alice in Wonderland, where everything is themed after that story. And here you have monsters destroying the city. Apparently students love having monsters destroy cities. Here's the octopus. Here's the Ghostbusters gang throwing marshmallows. And just have fun. Whatever you come up with, think of something fun, something original only you can do, and you'll have a great time with this project. I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with, and I will be here if you have any questions. All right, guys, good luck.